September 28th, 1918, Joseph Kraft. I was visiting my grandparents in Bourbon when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 12.
October 3rd, 1918, Mary Elizabeth Alexander. I lived in Bourbon with my husband Charles when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 38.
October 5th, 1918, Ida Rohrer. I lived in Argus and was teaching Sunday school at my church when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 21.
October 6th, 1918, Herbert Dinkeldine. I lived with my parents when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 6.
October 8th, 1918, Carol Ward. I lived in Tippecanoe with my husband Clyde when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 30.
October 10th, 1918, Charles Aldrich. I lived in Tea Garden with my wife, Nora, when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 62.
October 10th, 1918, Orda Elkins. I lived in Bourbon with my husband, and I had just given birth to a baby boy who died when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 25.
October 12th, 1918, Agnes Reed. I lived in Walkerton with my husband and our 2 small children when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 20.
October 12th, 1918, Elsie Rupel. I was a teacher in Walkerton when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 20.
October 12th, 1918, Lauren Salt. I worked as a chemist and lived in Perryville when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 21.
October 15th, 1918, John Latcher. I worked in Gary and was married with 3 daughters when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 35.
October 15th, 1918, Matthias Leffert. I had just bought Gidziner Farm in Arcus for my family when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 26.
October 16th, 1918, Harry Eastwood. I lived in Plymouth with my wife Fern, and I worked at the electric light plant when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 29.
October 16th, 1918, Irma York. I was with my family in Donaldson when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 10.
October 18th, 1918, Norma Joyce. I lived in Bourbon with my husband and our 3 young kids when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 33.
October 18th, 1918, Florence Lee. I lived in Plymouth with my husband of 6 months, Earl, when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 18.
October 19th, 1918, Vern Everly. I lived in Linkville with my parents when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 7.
October 20th, 1918, William Irwin. I died in Bourbon, traveling with my wife Bess on our wedding journey when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 33.
October 22nd, 1918, Zula Schussler. I lived with my husband, Dr. Walter Slusser, and our 2 young sons when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 26.
October 24th, 1918, Clara Thompson. I lived in Inwood with my husband, John, when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 52.
October 24th, 1918, Harley Vance. I lived in Argus with my mother, Artemida, when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 39.
October 25th, 1918, Palmer Guston. I was at Camp Sheridan in Alabama when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 21.
October 26th, 1918, Laura Burden. I worked as a nurse at Camp Sherman in Ohio when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 29.
October 28th, 1918, Gertrude Compton. I was a student living in Ann Arbor, Michigan when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 19.
October 28th, 1918. George Smith. I lived with my parents in South Bend when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 7.
October 31st, 1918. Marianne Bookholder. I lived in Bremen with my husband David, and I was pregnant when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 31.
November 2nd, 1918. Ellen Hill. I lived in Plymouth with my parents when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 4.
November 5th, 1918. Clarence Powers. I lived in Argus as I prepared to join the militia when I died from the Spanish flu. I was 30.
November 10th, 1918. Laura Joyce. I traveled to Bourbon to see my husband's dying mother when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 25.
November 12th, 1918. Grace Livesey. I lived with my husband and our 2 young children in Plymouth when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 23.
December 1st, 1918. James M. Confer. I joined the Navy and sailed the world, and then I lived in Chicago, where I died of the Spanish flu. I was 36.
December 1st, 1918. Homer Harness. I lived in LaPorte with my wife and 2 children and worked at Advanced Rumley Company when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 24.
December 6, 1918. Rosetta Burkett. I lived in Culver with my parents when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 7.
December the 9th, 1918. Florida Weaver. I had just returned home to Bremen from a long motor trip when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 33.
December 10th, 1918. Bert Bushman. I lived in LaPorte with my wife and our daughter, where I worked as a policeman when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 40.
December 10th, 1918. Iva Peterson. I traveled from Williston, Dakota, where I lived, to Tea Garden to stay with my grandparents when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 8.
December 11th, 1918. Russell Stein. I was a sergeant in the Home Guards, and I lived in Bourbon with my wife and child when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 23.
December 13th, 1918. Walter Meixel. I lived in Culver, and I was just starting beginner's class in primary school when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 4.
December 26th, 1918. Clarence Kling. I lived in Bremen with my wife, Meta, and my 8-month-old baby when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 31.
1919, the 14th of January. Mamie Eladina Sider. I lived in Los Angeles with my husband when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 27.
January 14th, 1919. Cyrus Warner. I worked at an orphanage, and I lived in Plymouth with my wife, Louise, when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 74.
January 16th, 1919. Edward Green. I lived in Lake of the Woods with my wife and child when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 36.
January 16th, 1919. Ruba Overmeyer. I had graduated from school and was living with my father and sisters in Argus when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 15.
February 28th, 1919. Esther May Cavender. I worked in Culver teaching domestic science when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 22.
March 18, 1919, Ruth Thomas. I was living with my mother and my siblings in Bourbon when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 15.
April 3rd, 1919. Margaret Marie Bowles. I lived in Bourbon with my parents when I died of the Spanish flu. I was 22.
May 4th, 1919. Leroy John Kern. I was the last person in Marshall County to die of the Spanish flu. I was 18.